Alright guys, it's competitive season. US Nationals is already coming by. In fact, at the time I am filming this episode, Italian Nationals just finished. And congrats to the winner. I didn't get a name, but he won with Shredders, so congrats to using Ninja Turtle stuff. Ninja Turtles are awesome. That said, it's time to whip out the 3 Ps. Easy, guys. I talk about how proper preparation prevents poor performance. There's more than 3 Ps, and I just realized that. I do have to credit my a chef I had back in the kitchen days, John Baker, who always used to drive that into me, that proper preparation prevents poor performance. What does that mean in the long scale? And I'm not gonna. This is not gonna be another episode. Oh, guys, practice! I do that at the end of every episode, and I've already done an episode very recently on proper practice. Because proper practice prevents poor performance. Hey, look at that. It goes, this alliteration thing continues. But one of those things, it's kind of come around that there's a lot of bystanders in this meta, in this competitive environment. And the metagame in general has, for a while now, included a fair number of bystander tokens. And one of the unfortunate facts of this is that WizKids can only provide so much, and while they've done a mediocre job at best of keeping us filled with bystander tokens, they're not doing a fantastic job. While it would be nice to get little play kits made with the bystander tokens, wink wink nudge nudge guys, we do kind of have to work on our own for this matter. And this is one part of many parts that I like to talk about and like to do as far as, you know, preparing myself for Heroclix tournaments and getting ready and knowing what's going to happen. And one of those things that's that does come up is keeping track of bystander tokens. Now, what I'm talking about is when a character like, let's say Devil Dinosaur as an example, or even the new Colossal Groot, create their tokens, their bystander tokens, there's no actual Heroclix related physical version of those. The Devil Dinosaur is a bad example because we have con exclusive pogs. Con exclusive ones, come on guys. And the Groots have no physical representation. We're kind of on our own for that. Now, if this is a problem for you, I do have to explain, this episode is for you. You might need to start having copies of your own, if you're not bringing them, that are intended for your opponent's use. Because if you can't keep track of them, and you think it's an actual detriment to your game, I don't believe your opponent should have, or I do believe every player should have to have some reasonable representation of these characters, but at the same time, we can't expect every single player all the time to be properly prepared with all of these elements, because sometimes last-second decisions occur, and you're not ready for it. So, what I'm suggesting to all players of the game of Heroclix is, especially if you're aware of how the competitive game is going, perhaps it's best to have some copies of tokens you're not necessarily using, but for your opponent's use. An example of this is I have started carrying around a charged up token, or rather a bystander token that I had made of a poker chip of the charged up tokens for when I go to tournaments. Most importantly, because when people use the special marker, you do miss it. And I have a terrible retention for this myself. And that's why I have started doing it. I've started correcting my own behavior so that I don't accidentally get caught off guard. I'm never going to accuse a player of intentionally attempting to deceive by not having these tokens ready. But at the same time, it's a little deceptive to your own brain to not be able to keep track of it and not have some way of being aware of it. This is impossible to do for every token sometimes. I get that. You can't predict some things being in the competitive meta. I understand that. But there are a number of players, or a number of community members out there that do create these bystander tokens, print them on poker chips, or print them on stickers and make poker chips out of them. Or I would suggest being ready with a printer and start glue. Before I purchased a set of Devil Dinosaur Pogs, I had the ugliest set of poker chips, just general poker chips, that I had glued printed pictures of all the bystander tokens on, because they were color printed too. So I understood which one was. Because I was using Devil Dinosaur and it wasn't fair to my opponent to not understand which one we were using or try to keep track of which one we were using. So I would tell my opponents, like, the stats are all on there. If you have any questions, here's the cards over here. We're cool with it. You should be cool with it, especially if it's a better representation of this thing. Because Bystanders has been around for 15 years, but creating Bystanders has only been around since the Captain America set, and only in small amounts. And the Captain America set came with 3D representations to a certain degree. As an example, we had the Red Hawk on Falcon, and we had Monkey Joe on the Squirrel Girl dial, or on the figure. So we're now moving into this. We're going to create Bystander tokens, but not necessarily give you the Bystander tokens, so we are kind of on our own on that one. Half rant, half... guys, if it's a problem, keep track of it. And the best way to find out if it's a problem is to practice with them as special markers or some kind of other marker. Because if you cannot be keeping track of it, you need to start thinking about bringing your own until WizKids does something about it. There's no protest that's going to work in this sense. We do have to kind of make WizKids aware that we need this. And if we have to make our own to do it, then let's make our own to do it. Let's bring stuff for our opponent to use during our games so that we don't run into this problem constantly, because it is an argument I've heard a number of times, and I don't disagree with the people arguing, but you cannot force something that is not provided. And my solution is, if it bothers you, do remember you can be the one that brings a couple extra bystanders. Because we have the figures too. We might use the figures someday. Bring your own thing. It's not a problem. I apologize for that loud squeaking noise that just came out of me. I don't know where that came from. But honestly, be aware of your shortcomings. Be ready to fix them in some degree, and make sure you do your best both on your side and your opponent's side to communicate what's going on the board, so that there's none of these awareness issues. If you do have some kind of problem keeping track of people people using bystanders or special markers as bystanders or some kind of nondescript token, please be ready with your own. That way you can't have the excuse, and you don't give your opponent the excuse, and you don't let your opponent deceive, because that's the way it's going to go. As a general rule, and I'm going to go for my experience on this, when I do offer these tokens to people, they very graciously often say, "Thank you very much, I appreciate it," and then ask to borrow for the rest of the tournament. I do have to tell them, like, I might need this later on for another opponent, so unfortunately I can't. But you kind of get the idea. So hopefully this kind of sends that message out to the radar, or the general consensus group. Hopefully somebody is listening, and one day we get a punch-out cardboard thing of bystanders for these things, or they start printing a bunch more of the con exclusive style bystander token pogs. That would be great. But in the meantime, look to the community. There are guys out there who do help with this kind of situation. I know we use Big Bully Games to make our action tokens for our patrons, so perhaps they're capable of doing other custom artwork for you guys. So keep your eyes open out there in the world, and just be aware that you need to know how you can communicate with the board, and how you understand the board, and how you understand the possible miscommunication of bystanders by practice, because practice will help your awareness get better.